So for the next 20 minutes or so, what I'm going to do is just show you how you, as LandUp users, can interact with and access Ordnance Survey Mastermap data. Just before I do, there's a couple of things to make you aware of while I'm on the homepage. Firstly, that you might have seen there's been a bit of a product update today around wild edges. If there's time, I'll demonstrate what that is, but it's a very exciting new workflow that we've added to the Land app to enable you to create wildlife corridors across your land, whether that's for you or your client. And also just to highlight it, otherwise Tom will be upset with me. We've recently just released a community page, which is now filing away our blogs, our product updates, thought leadership pieces we're writing with partners, and also some coffee break blogs. So do have a look at this. Plus, for events now, you can come directly to the community page to register for any upcoming webinars. And so we've just launched 3 separate dates around different management for different sectors, so the estates, farmers, and ecology. So do have a quick look at that. So really, I'm going to dive in and log into my LandUp account, and as per, I'm going to create a bit of a demo map for Ordnance Survey Mastermap. If you want any assistance on how to get to this point, please do contact us through the support and guidance, or see the help pages. And I'm going to give this our demo tag, which is getting big. So as usual, most of our workflows on the Land app start by defining your boundary. However, we just wanted to make you aware that you don't need to define a boundary to buy Ordnance Survey Mastermap, but the workflow that I'm just going to show you is just going to show you how you get those first couple of steps in. On some of Gus's images, you may have noticed that a lot of that data looked similar to what Land app's had for a little while. So for example, when I turn on an Ordnance Survey base map, the data that is coming through here is a combination of Mastermap and another data layer called Ordnance Survey Open Vector. And it only becomes Mastermap once you start hitting that credit system. So you can see at the bottom of the screen, the image has gone from free to premium. Now, those of you on the free product will have to top up your credits. On the professional, you can either top up your credits, or if you're eligible, you can start wiring in your Ordnance Survey data hub, and we can provide guidance on that if you are eligible at a later time. But this data you see in the background is Mastermap. So this is showing you just an image of the data that Gus has just been explaining. So where the exact locations of ponds are, buildings, you can see field parcel outlines. However, this data is what we call raster, and raster just means that it's an image that you can't click on. So I can't click on any of these features. I can't get any insights on, for example, how long that ditch is or how big this woodland is. So the way that we've been serving Mastermap up to this point has been useful for your prints, but exactly getting the insight that you may need, such as your hectareage of woodland across your land holding, has been limited until now. And what we're hoping for is that this update allows you to get a bit more insight from that Mastermap. So to show you the workflow, there's 2 ways that you can define your boundary. I'm going to import from Rural Payment Agency. Ooh, that was my email. Bear with me. Get a SPI number from my Blue Peter sheet here. And I'm just going to download my land parcels. And for those that have been on webinars before, we're going to go to our favorite farm in Surrey, Norney Farm. And that is an SPI download. So from the Rural Payment Agency of all my individual land parcels. Now, the first thing I would say is actually using an SPI number to purchase your Mastermap isn't as valuable as the other route, which is pick from land registry. And just to show you that if I instead hit the pick from land registry button and select the Norney Farm polygon, it's made that orange. I hit save boundary, and there's a slight difference between what's in orange and what's in blue. The blue is the bit from the Rural Payment Agency, but they don't have logged in many cases a lot of the urban environments that's associated with the farm and or estate. So it is recommended that when you're creating and purchasing OS Mastermap, that instead of doing it on your SPI number, you do it on your land registry parcels. So just to show you, you can edit your selection as well, and you can select more parcels, even if they're outside your ownership, and you can choose to purchase, for example, a ring of data around your farm. But for this demo, I'm just going to demo Norney Farm. So that's my boundary. The first thing you need to do is create a project from that boundary. Just as a note, we are updating this workflow in the next 2 months. We're doing a bit of a rejig in this left-hand panel, but within the next 2 months, you firstly just need to duplicate your land registry parcels into an ownership boundary. Like so. And what that does is that now puts a red line boundary on my map. And that red line boundary is consisting of the different polygons that make up my ownership, or Tim's ownership in this case. And now you're ready to purchase Mastermap. So this is my project area. And to introduce you to where you can access and purchase and at least get a quote for Mastermap is we've introduced on the top right-hand side a buy data button. So it's this little suitcase with a play icon in it. When you hover over it, it says buy data, and it's nestled between the import and the measure tools. Once you hit buy data, our shop window, which is what we're calling it, this buy data page on the left-hand side pops up. And there's 3 separate, at the moment, data sets that you can access. One of which is free, which is the wild edges point that I made earlier. And if there's time, I'll demonstrate that. There's the RPA import, just to flag up anyone who's working with maybe a client whose SBI number spans a large area. That could be a wildlife trust or a landed estate. And you may just want to download a section of their RPA SBI number. So instead of downloading all the parcels, I'd recommend using that. Just a note, that's only available to subscribers. And then finally, the Mastermap topography layer, which is why we're here. And what happens is once you click that, you're met with another left-hand panel form that allows you to start to work out what data you're buying and how much it's going to cost. So the first thing you need to do in this workflow is you need to define your purchase area. So in that previous piece, I've created a project called ownership, which is available in this dropdown. Now, if I'd had multiple projects, say my stewardship or my tenancy plans, etc., they would be available in here. But for the moment, I've only got my ownership. And if I click that, automatically the land app calculates the price for buying the master map that's contained within this boundary, and that's the license for 12 months use. So that's using the project boundary. And I'll come on to this intersect setting in a moment, but you can also define whether you want all the features. And when we say all features, that might mean that you have a fuzzy edge to the outside of your field where features from Mastermap are longer than the actual boundary. So a prime example is if you've got a ditch running through the field, similar to what this contour line is doing. If you choose whole features, that ditch, you will get displayed all the way until Mastermap says it's the start of a new feature. Or if you want it to be a neat edge, you can choose cut features. And that will give it a hard edge. So that ditch that I just described will be cut perfectly to my red line boundary. The price between those two are exactly the same because you're purchasing the Mastermap feature rather than the total area of the feature itself. And I'm actually just going to run that as so that's my project. Oh, sorry, I can't spell. Project. And I'm actually just going to run through this one. Then I'm going to demonstrate the other route, which is when you don't require a project. So if I hit buy now, you're met with a splash screen, which is you confirming that you're happy to purchase this data, which is Mastermap topography from Ordnance Survey, the total area you're purchasing, and the price associated with it. I'm going to call this OS demo so we don't get charged. And it's actually linked to my account. So if you do write OS demo, unfortunately, you will still be charged. And I hit buy now. And what that's done is that's sent my farm boundary to the land app database that holds Ordnance Survey Mastermap. It then returns the data fully formatted onto your land app page. One thing you do need to do, however, is hit refresh. At the moment, we can't auto refresh, but what you can see has happened is it's now served an uncut, so I didn't choose cut, I had whole features, data of my Ordnance Survey Mastermap. So it's put on my map all the different polygons that either touched or intersected with Norney Farm. So as Gus was just saying, each of those polygons have got information contained within them, the land use type, the theme, the descriptive group, etc., etc. So as I click on each of those, you can see that compared to the base map, I'm getting a lot more insight. So the shapes that you can see on the base map, I can't click because I've purchased the vector data. I can now click on them and use them for plans. And I'll come on to that in a moment. Just to demonstrate that workflow again, but instead of using my ownership boundary, I'm just going to purchase a square of data. So I'm just going to purchase around Norney Farm. I'm going to go back into buy data. I'm going to choose Mastermap topography, but instead of using a project, I'm going to tick this create a frame button. And what this does is that now drops, similar to our print function, a movable box. And that box can be changed in shape. And as you change the area, the price will update. So you can see that as I make the box bigger, the price automatically calculates how much the cost of the data contained in that box is. Now, the price for Mastermap, it's worth noting, isn't consistent across the country. And the reason for that is if you think about central London, the amount of data contained within central London is a lot different to the Highlands of Scotland. There's just so many more buildings. You saw that 3-dimensional data that Gus was just showing. So therefore, When you're in an urban environment, so a settlement they call it, the price is more expensive. And when you're in rural, it's slightly cheaper. And when you're in moorland, it's the cheapest. And so LandUp is built in the background, that payment logic. So at the moment, if I keep the box the same size, but I move it towards Godalming, from 330, that price goes up to 412. So there's a dynamic price associated with not only the area, but also the location. So actually, if Tim moved to the west by a couple of kilometers, the price of his Mastermap drops fairly significantly. So 322 down to 274. Now, I know when you're on the edge of the town, it can be quite frustrating. You haven't got any urban environments. We are actually in discussions with potentially calculating it in a different way, but at the moment, that's the structure of data, and it's actually based on 1 kilometer grid squares. So it says that this kilometer grid square is urban, it says this kilometer grid square is rural, and because half of Tim's farm is in rural and half of it's in urban, he's paying slightly more premium. So just a note about the pricing structure there. So it's area, but also the location. If you move this polygon up into Scotland, I'd imagine it would drop down again to about £70. Once you're happy with the box, so I'm just gonna maybe choose my area like this. I'm actually gonna just include that area and make it like that. I'm actually instead gonna change my intersect settings to cut, which means when the LandUp serves me the data, you should be able to see a perfect box. OSM demo 2. And again, if I buy now, demo 002, a non-billable, accepting the price. It is worth saying if you're on Teams or on Professional and you hit billable, you can give it a job code that's then added to your monthly billing. So if you are, for example, selling data to a client, we can handle the administration of that off-selling. So it could be potentially another revenue stream for you as a user of LandUp if you're selling the data onto a client. I'm going to do the same process. In a moment, I'm going to show you the My Data page, but I'm just going to go back to map, refresh my page, and if all of our data has worked well, I should have a nice bounding box of Ordnance Survey Mastermap, but instead it's been cut to that bounding box that I defined. And there's a couple of things that you can do this. So that's the importing the data. Once you've purchased that data, you've licensed that data for 12 months, and you can use that data however you wish. And that includes, making a print and sharing it, or collaborating with an advisor or a land agent, or even your farmer group. As long as when they're collaborating to benefit the individual that's purchased the data. So as a note, we've updated our end user license to say that if you invite a trusted stakeholder as a collaborator into your map, so I invited Tom or Tim at the LandUp, he then has permission through our end user license agreement to use that Ordnance Survey data if it's benefiting me, the individual that purchased it, as a note. Once you've purchased it, there's a couple of bits of insight that you can get. The first thing is, obviously, you bought it for 12 months, so you can export that data. So that vector data isn't trapped within the LandUp. We're very much open to people taking it to other bits of software. So the first way that you can export it is you can do it as per usual. You can just hit the export button and download what you can see on the LandUp. So it's a fully formatted LandUp download. Or just to show you, we've introduced a new bespoke page within this little icon called Data Purchases. So it might be hidden behind my head, depending on where my camera's sat for your screens, but there's a little person icon. You click it and you can go to Data Purchases. What that does is that opens up a separate window. So it doesn't close your map. It's just, it'll be a new tab. And within here, you can see all of the different purchases that either yourself or anyone within your organization has purchased. So the demo that I've just done, I've done 2. Both in the same map called demo OSMM, but I did a OS demo 001 and a demo 002. And from here, you can actually export raw Ordnance Survey Mastermap data. So the difference between what's in the LandUp, this is that we've styled it to make it look how we want on LandUp. But if you download it from here, you download it raw from the database. So just 2 slightly different work streams. And you do that by hitting this Download As button. Click Download As, and you can choose the file format that you want. So we've got GeoJSON shapefile, GML, which is the GZ native for Ordnance Survey Mastermap, and we've got KML, which is your Google Earth, and then we've also got this LandUp GeoJSON, which is just formatted as the same on the screen. Just as a note, we are releasing DXF files, so if anyone here is a CAD user, don't worry if you don't know what that means. people who do use it will understand that that's hopefully going to be released at the end of this, I don't know, what's it, Friday day, end of next week. We have a DXF file format good to go on the production system. We're just doing a bit of testing. Once you choose any of these, just to show you, say I want to download my Mastermap as a shapefile to upload to maybe an Esri system. What this does is this just sends a new request to our database and generates a hyperlink that you can click on, and that automatically downloads that shapefile to your computer. Just to demonstrate, for example, if I was doing a GeoJSON, generate link, it just sends that request to our server, quickly packages it up, zips it, and then you can download 2 things. And within that shapefile, just to show you that the data that you've purchased is all formatted as a shapefile would. I mean, from a personal level, I would avoid shapefiles if you can, but that's another discussion. So you're adding DXF. The GML one is formatted as Ordnance Survey would serve it for you, and you can download that, use it as you will. Just remember that you've only licensed it for 12 months. So you can access a downloadable license by clicking this license button. You can see the tooltip is telling me that I've got 364 days that my license is in check. And it also tells you here when your license runs out. Within license, you can hit the button and that will download a PDF to your computer. And if I open that, it's a fully formatted license that if, for example, you were trying to upload it somewhere else or you had to justify you had a license, this contains all the information about your purchase, where you've licensed it from, your license number, and the expiry date. It's also worth mentioning that there is a link in there to our terms of use. So do have a quick check about that. That license is dynamic. So at the end of your 12 months, your download as button will actually turn into a green renew now button. So if you do come up past 12 months and you want to relicense the data, just hit the renew now button and we can sort out all of the renewals with Ordnance Survey and automatically report it for you. You can delete from here. This delete button just removes the license from your data page. It doesn't actually delete your license with Ordnance Survey. That's already automatically logged. So this is your Mastermap, and obviously you can see the other data purchases I've got in here. So if you do get involved with the wild edges, for example, the same principle applies. You can come and download your wild edges as a different format. Oh, the DXF's been released there. So yeah, the DXF will just be pushed to Ordnance Survey Mastermap soon. So that's how you download the data. That's how you get it off. And just as a note, you can, if you want, buy big swathes of data. LandApp does actually have an upper threshold for size. So if you're a large estate and you purchase the data, there will be a case over about 2,000 hectares where it might not be able to serve the data. Don't worry, get in touch with customer support and we can help you basically digest that data in a slightly more user-friendly way. The data, it's worth saying that the data purchases page here, there's no limit to how much you download. So if you do hypothetically want to buy all the Mastermap for Cornwall, this process will allow you to export it for the whole of Cornwall. There's no upper limit on this download. So we can just be a shop window if you want, or we can be a place that you can interact with the data as well. So back to my map with Mastermap, I want to just explain a couple of the use cases that I find, really valuable. The first one is once you purchase that vector data, you can automatically generate a report on it. So for example, if I wanted to generate a report on this piece of vector data, I can choose my reports button at the top right, add a project and summarize both of my Ordnance Survey areas. So that's the project, which is the Norney Farm one that wasn't clipped. And then my OSMM demo 2 is the one that was clipped. I choose that. And that will break down all of those Ordnance Survey descriptions into categories and give it to you in a tabular form. So if, for example, you had purchased your estate boundary or your farm boundary, that's a really quick way of getting direct insight into the total number of buildings, for example, that you find within your boundary, or the total area of these different types of woodland. So for example, what I've just purchased is 80.82 hectares of mixed woodland and 7.78 hectares of conifer woodland. And it's that authoritative data that we're confident is starting to underpin the natural capital market. And we're basically trying to work out ways to enhance this data for biodiversity offsetting, as an example. There's some really good insight from here. And as per all our reports, you can export that report as a Excel spreadsheet. So if you want a summary of your purchase or your estate in terms of area, count or percentage, and actually length as well for, say, footpaths, footbridges and ditches and ponds, for example, that's also contained within that summary. So that's the high level report. But what we're really here to work out is, okay, once I've purchased the data, how can I really leverage it to deliver some of the more nuanced use cases? I'm just going to go back onto this one just as an example. So you've now purchased the OS Mastermap vector. There's a couple of things you can do. The first thing you can do is you can quickly create authoritative, say, sales plans or applications to local planning authorities using what you know is up-to-date Mastermap. And actually, as a point on the how relevant it is, it gets updated every 6 weeks, and the Land app will automatically, within 24 hours of update, be able to serve that most up-to-date data. So let's just say, for a hypothetical situation, that I wanted to create a sales plan on all these buildings from Mastermap. What you can do is you can right-click on a building. You can select all the buildings by hitting the select feature type one. So you can see that it's just highlighted all of those. And I can then copy all of my buildings into, I don't know, a sales plan. Like so. And by doing that, well, actually there were some buildings down there, which I can remove in a moment. I've now just brought over just the shapes of the Ordnance Survey Mastermap buildings with nothing else. There's nothing else in the background. So if I turn my base map to blank, all I've got is all those buildings, which I can then color in how I want. Let's say I want to make them red. And I also want to give them a label such as area. I've then got the raw ingredients to start creating an authoritative plan. And I'm sure there's many other use cases, but it might be that each of these have got a different lot number, and I can label my different buildings, maybe buildings 1 and 2 equals lot 1, or whatever it might be. So you can label them quickly, you can turn on the areas, and it might be that actually for this small scale, let's turn it into meters squared. So those are that's the start of my sales plan. And the same principle might be that you want to, add a bit of a boundary to that. So if I say I want to use these 3, I'm holding shift, selecting from my OS Mastermap project area, and I'm copying those, authoritative features to my sales plan. I can maybe merge that all together and then give that, just a black outline or a green outline. And turn off the base map. And again, I've started to use that master map as an authoritative shape and location data set that I can use for an application to a sales plan. That's just to show you how you can interact with the data. It is worth saying that when we serve you the Ordnance Survey data, it's technically editable, but we have introduced a lock project button, which is this little padlock. And I would recommend, as soon as you purchase the OS Mastermap, just to hit lock project. And like this, what that means is that either you or anyone that you're collaborating with can no longer edit any of this data. So I can't change any of this stuff. As a note, as soon as you edit it, obviously it's no longer authoritative, but you can go and re-download from the datas page the Land app version of your data. So if you do mess up, don't worry, no stress, but obviously lock it as a default if possible. One thing to also say is that the labels come through as a separate layer. So Ordnance Survey labels are based on obviously indicating what each of those features mean. So if you're not clicking on the shape, the name of the house is included in that download, and that's done at a zoom level. So depending on what zoom level you're in, it will show different labels. So for example, it's showing me Lower Eashing there, but as I go to a certain level of resolution, it starts showing me other labels like the name of the feature, which is a drain. That comes as a separate layer. And so yeah, each of those features can be toggled on and off, which just hopefully gives you the flexibility you need to add different labels. One request we had fairly recently is you can, if you want, style these shapes however you want. So for example, you may not be happy with how Land app styles the shapes themselves. Make sure your project's unlocked, and it might be that you want to restyle all the agricultural land. You can just right click on it, select feature type, and change the style however you wish, whether that's make it more transparent, maybe change the border, etc. So you can just quickly edit and make that master map fit for purpose, however you want. And that includes, and we've seen quite a few people doing that, if you want, for example, to make it all black and white, you can actually just select all of your features. And actually, sorry, that's a lie. You can select all of the polygon features, the area features, like so, he says confidently. Select all areas. So there we are. So I've just select the polygons, and then you can override all of the styles. So it might be that I want to make them all transparent, and I want to make them all have a thin and black boundary. So then when I'm printing on black and white, for example. You can within that as well, you know, for example, make all of the buildings stand out by turning those maybe black or grey. So that will hopefully give you the flexibility you need to make a bespoke backcloth for your mapping while using authoritative Ordnance Survey data. So there's my black and white map. Oh, I've actually left the rivers in blue, but actually that looks quite nice. We're not hopefully being too restrictive. You can change the shape, the styling of those shapes. So the final thing I wanted to just dive onto, so I've done a bit of a sales plan. I mean, very rushed, and obviously the red line boundary can be tidied up. But what I now want to do is I want to print for free on that data set. So traditionally with Mastermap, you know, you can print on a backcloth like this, but when you go to hit print, you'll be met with a paywall because you're still purchasing the image in the background. However, for users that have purchased, say, the data, the square of data, you can print your sales plan for free. And the way that you do that, just to show you, is when you go to print, just make sure you've got blank base map on. When you go to print, then new frame, blank, the price is 0 because you've already purchased the vector data. So you can use that as your own backcloth rather than having to pay Ordnance Survey for the image of that backcloth later in the day. So this is my plan, very basic, but at least then when I go to print, it's got the authoritative Ordnance Survey data, but I'm not having to get charged for it again. Now, we do occasionally see people purchase data like I have, which is your estate boundary. And actually, I would recommend that you do purchase, say, like this. But let's just say for the hypothetical situation is you want to print your sales plan, but you do actually want to include maybe a high resolution backcloth in the back. At the moment, you do have to purchase that license. So say, for example, I wanted to print it like this, I would have to, if it's outside of my boundary, purchase the license from Ordnance Survey to cover the additional raster data, the additional license data in the background. So if I go for a new frame, you can see I've got to pay £15, which covers maybe that building that was outside of my ownership and that building, etc. Just while I'm here, I wanted to make you aware that if you do use Ordnance Survey as a base map, we have introduced, and I think I'm at the right level, yeah, we've introduced the ability to improve the print quality of your prints. So you can move from standard to premium. The price doesn't change, but what we do instead is we serve vector data to do your backcloth rather than raster data. So that it's slightly nuanced. And actually, if you're printing in A3 or A4, it won't make much difference. But for any of you printing plans in, say, A1, A0, I would recommend changing that print quality to premium, and you should get a lot crisper images when you do print. Only on premium can you flick between black and white as well, by the way. So we're looking at getting a black and white raster base map, so a black and white backcloth. But at the moment, we've just got it in that vector format. But you can print, say, in high quality. Here's my sales plan. I've got the Ordnance Survey pieces, and then I can add a legend, for example, onto my map or a header and footer, as per usual. But using that premium data set, there is an additional fee, just so you need to be aware of. Okay, so the final bit of update that I just want to show you with Mastermap before we move on to questions is that buying Mastermap may not be the first port of call for some of you. And the sales plan might be a good example, is that we've also introduced another way that you can access Mastermap. So if maybe purchasing the whole farm seems like a bit of a jump, you don't actually, if you're just doing a sales plan on a certain barn or a certain field, you can now actually trace Ordnance Survey Mastermap without actually purchasing it. To access this, you do need to be either using the credit system, because this is part of the premium package, or for you Ordnance Survey partners out there, you can be using your OS Data Hub API. But just to demonstrate what I mean is that when you've gone to a zoom level of which turns premium, there's a little button that says interactive map at the bottom. And hopefully you can see that on my screen. It's quite small, but I can toggle that off to on. It doesn't look like much has happened, apart from you can see my mouse is now trying to click on things. And actually, when I try and draw a polygon, so if I hit draw an area, I'm now able to trace the back map. You can see it's now trying to pick up the shape of this woodland for me. So I can then use, without purchasing the master map, I can at least use the vector file to trace, providing that I'm buying Ordnance Survey credits for browsing that master map data. What I've just done is instead of having to buy all the master map, I've just traced that woodland and I've brought it over to my sales plan and give it a sales plan call, or you can bring that over to a number of different shapes. So just to re-show you that, if, for example, I was trying to sell these 3 buildings, I don't necessarily need to go through that data purchasing process. I could just trace that building using our new trace function, like so. And therefore, I know I've got the exact shape of master map without having to worry about going through that licensing implication. So that's basically extracting value as a derived data set from Ordnance Survey. So what I wanted to do, just to finish up, just a quick statement, is that obviously, please go and buy the master map, please use it. There's a couple of fun things we're doing around the side of master map, like using it for baseline habitat assessments, so it can underpin maybe a natural capital assessment. Do have a look at the terms of use. Ordnance Survey are really trying to get it out there, but there are licenses that you need to just make sure you're adhering to. So do check it when you do buy a license, or check it on our website. And also, if anyone's here from a public sector organization, so that's a local council or a district council, please do get in touch, because actually everything I've just shown you today, we can serve to you for free. So under something called the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement, all governments and local organizations related to the government have been given access to Ordnance Survey data for free to try and help stimulate, a lot of things, whether that's, meeting the housing crisis or trying to do environmental recovery. And the Land App is one tool that can deliver that data to you for free really quite quickly. So if that's of interest, or if you know anyone that's of interest, or potentially if you're in a parish and you're working with your local parish, this may be a good avenue to go through, because there's some really good opportunities that we can work with you on. But other than that, I think I've covered everything. I can see there's 6 questions in the Q&A, which is great. So I will welcome both Gus and Tom back on screen, and I guess we can go through the Q&A together.
Gus, thank you very, very much for coming. I appreciate you had a mammoth of a week for Ordnance Survey over there. They're keeping you busy, but glad you could spare us an hour, and I was really fascinated listening to your presentation. So thank you very much for coming along, and as usual, thanks Dan for your efforts. So we'll wrap it up there, and have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Great, thank you guys, and thank you, Gus. Bye.
Thank you.